Now on Face the State, policy is moving forward, some of it drawing controversy. Several groups showed up at our State House to call for action or protest action from lawmakers on a few different fronts. Thank you so much for joining us this Sunday morning on Face the State. I'm Tracy Townsend. Lawmakers are combining two bills into one in an effort to ban access to care and participation in sports for transgender children. House Bill 68 is known as the SAFE Act. In a move on Wednesday, a House committee combined two bills into one. The new House Bill 68 would ban gender-affirming care for children and bar transgender athletes from participating on girls' sports teams in schools. Opponents of the bill say the legislation is an attack on the transgender community. Republicans say it's necessary to protect children's physical and mental health. Meantime, the American Medical Association is reaffirming its promise to protect access to gender-affirming care. The policy board for the nation's largest physicians group passed a resolution opposing laws that block access to such care for people who identify as transgender or gender diverse. According to the Human Rights Coalition, 20 state legislatures have passed bans on gender-affirming care up to the age 18. Lawmakers in 6 other states, including ours, are considering bans. A new Gallup poll clearly shows public opinion moving in one direction when it comes to transgender athletes. 69% of Americans believe athletes should compete on teams that match their sex at birth. That's up from 62% in 2021. There was also a demonstration against Senate Bill 83. It would ban mandatory diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in colleges and universities. It also bans university staff from striking. Protesters held a mock funeral, they say, to mourn the loss of higher education. Senate Bill 83 has already passed the Senate and is now working its way through the House. This morning, people who live in East Palestine are calling for emergency help. Neighbors say they need Governor Mike DeWine to declare an emergency for their community to access federal support. Many of these people say they're still experiencing symptoms from exposure to the toxic chemicals, and they say they've been left with more questions than answers about their futures.
We need this help now.
We need help now.
We must now demand that Governor DeWine assign emergency declaration for East Palestine.
10 TV's Carly Dion takes a closer look.
We need this help now.
We need help now.
East Palestine residents hoping their request is heard loud and clear.
We must now demand that Governor DeWine assign emergency declaration for East Palestine.
That demand bringing dozens of supporters to the State House Wednesday, sharing personal stories from the last 4 months.
February 3rd.
February 3rd.
It's a day that will be etched in the minds of residents of East Palestine and its surrounding communities for the rest of their lives.
And my family has lost everything.
A fiery train derailment released toxic chemicals into the air, ground, and water that day. The impacts of this disaster still affecting those who live there.
Because people are still getting sick. It started with respiratory illnesses, nosebleeds, intestinal issues.
It's easy enough to say just pick up and leave, but would you have the money to do that? To replace everything in your home?
Many families left with no choice but to move, leaving behind lifelong homes and memories that can't be replaced.
I still visit my home daily just to manicure the yard and look after things the way that I knew my grandfather would want done.
Other families still deciding whether to leave behind their new beginnings.
We had just purchased a home about a year ago.
Jess and Chad Connard bought their dream home with their 3 boys in February of 2022. This photo showing the view from their home 3 days after the derailment, about 2.5 miles from where it happened. Now still living there, she says her family is still experiencing minor symptoms.
We're not really sure what to do next. We'll never be able to sell our house.
Connard says she and her husband are still figuring out what's next for them, with more questions than answers on the possible risks that lie ahead.
We want to stay, but we only want to stay if it's safe.
Our thanks to Carly Dion for that story. One bill that lawmakers say will save children's lives is moving forward with a much more positive response. The Ohio House passed legislation to require AEDs in all schools and at sporting events. House Bill 47 also requires proper training on the devices for school staff and coaches. The goal here is to prevent children from dying from sudden cardiac arrest. Right now, schools in Ohio are not mandated to have an AED on site. In 30 other states, they are required. The bill now goes to the Senate. Just in time for the celebration of Juneteenth, news that may surprise you. Ohio's Constitution allows for slavery, and lawmakers are considering a resolution to change the document. Article 1, Section 6 of the Constitution of the state of Ohio reads, "There shall be no slavery in this state, nor involuntary servitude unless for the punishment of crime." The language has been in place since 1851. Well, now in 2023, lawmakers have mounted a new push, a joint resolution, in fact, to remove both slavery and involuntary servitude from the state's constitution as a punishment for crimes. I talked with State Representative Dontavius Gerald, who introduced this proposed amendment.
What does that say to every single Black and brown person who live and work in this state? And so for me, as I said before, I don't want my grandchildren and children growing up and seeing the founding document of our state still have slavery in it. And so let's get it out. I mean, I think this will pass overwhelmingly if given the opportunity to get in front of the voters.
That's a challenge now, is to get it before the voters in August, correct?
That is correct. So we have to get through the House. And then when it passes the House, I'm speaking into affirmative, when it passes the House, we have to then pass it in the Senate. And then from there, we'll be able to put it directly on the ballot.
And then the language doesn't say this would apply just to Black people.
No, it does not. This is all people. I mean, and the other part too, I think is really important to talk about is, there is a connection to human trafficking. Right. What we're talking about is all slavery. We're talking about all involuntary servitude in every instance, perspective, condition you can think of. And so what we want to say is that as a state, we don't want any form of slavery or involuntary servitude ever in this state. And so whatever that looks like, whoever that impacts, we want our founding document to make sure that again, we don't have, it's not legal to hold someone in that way ever.
State Representative Gerald is working across party lines on this. He's working with State Rep Phil Plummer from the Dayton area. He's a Republican. Their amendment is now in the Constitutional Resolutions Committee. We will tell you how that progresses. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance made headlines this past week for his claims about former President Trump's indictment. 10 TV News reporter Kevin Landers spoke with him over the phone. Here's a portion of that interview.
You've called the indictment a sham. If that's the case, what are you saying about the DOJ?
Well, what I'm saying is the DOJ is unfortunately become fundamentally political. And the argument that I'd make to people who are skeptical of Donald Trump is, look, this isn't just about Donald Trump. If you look at a Catholic father of 7 arrested for political activism in front of his own children, you look at the Department of Justice going after parents who are peacefully protesting at their kids' schools, but also leaving very hardened criminals to walk our streets. There is way too much politics at the leadership of the Department of Justice and way too little justice and equality under the law. And I think that's a problem that the U.S. Senate needs to take on. I'm actually going to announce some policies this afternoon to try to make that problem a little bit better. But really, this is not, to me, this whole case is not about Donald Trump. This is about whether we have impartial application of justice, and that's why I'm so concerned about it. Donald Trump is the former president, is a very wealthy guy. I really worry about everyday common Ohioans. What do we have if not the rule of law in this country?
But people will argue this isn't political. This is about a discussion about whether or not a law was broken.
Well, I think that, one, I don't think the law was broken. But even if you assume, let's sort of take the critic's argument at face value and say, for assumption and for the sake of argument, that the law was broken here. If you only prosecute one person of one political party for breaking that law, and you don't prosecute the other political party for breaking the law in the exact same way, that, again, is not impartial administration of justice. That's political targeting, and that's what I'm really concerned about.
The senator claimed there is a double standard. We want to verify and bring in reporter Casey Decker.
Former President Trump and his supporters are claiming the recent federal indictment over mishandling classified documents is a politically motivated witch hunt. They say several other politicians have also gotten in trouble for how they handled sensitive material, including Joe Biden, former Vice President Mike Pence, and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Yep, Trump is the only one who's been charged with crimes. But is that the only reason his case is different from the other three? Let's verify. Our sources, the full text of the indictment of Trump, then FBI Director James Comey's statement on the Clinton investigation, statements by Biden's attorney, a letter by Pence's attorney, and the Department of Justice. We'll go through each case one by one. When he left the White House, Donald Trump took boxes of documents to his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. The DOJ investigation showed that hundreds of the documents were classified, some dealing with military operations and nuclear weapons. They were stored in bathrooms, on stages, and in storage closets at the club, according to the indictment. Joe Biden had documents from his time as vice president at his home in Delaware and a private office in D.C. According to CBS News, about 20 of those documents were classified. They were stored in a locked closet in his D.C. office and his garage and home library in Delaware. Mike Pence had several documents in his home in Indiana. We don't know exactly how many, what they covered, or where specifically in the home they were stored. And Hillary Clinton was investigated not for physically storing documents from her time in office as Secretary of State, but for transmitting classified information over a private email server instead of via secure government channels. The FBI found that more than 100 emails contained classified info out of the roughly 30,000 they examined. The Bureau did not release details about the classified emails they found. So all four had classified material where they shouldn't have. All four were investigated by the Justice Department. So what makes Trump's case different? Primarily, it's what he did after the documents were discovered. When Biden's lawyers found classified documents in his office and home, they immediately notified the DOJ and the National Archives, and the material was handed over the next day. Pence instigated the search of his own home in Indiana and immediately turned over the documents found there. And Clinton cooperated with the FBI's investigation, turning over roughly 30,000 emails. The FBI did note that her team didn't turn over thousands more they considered to be personal and not work-related, but also noted there was no evidence Clinton's team intentionally hid anything important from investigators. But according to the indictment against Trump, the former president not only didn't cooperate or promptly return documents, he actively obstructed the investigation. Of the 37 counts he's facing, 6 involve misleading, lying to, hiding evidence from, and conspiring to thwart investigators. The others are for keeping the documents in the first place. The Pence and Clinton cases were both closed with no charges recommended. A DOJ special counsel has been assigned to the Biden investigation, which is still ongoing. With your Verify, I'm Casey Decker.
Senator Vance also threatened to block DOJ nominees over the Trump indictment. We asked Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown, about that.
I don't think the Justice Department should do what it needs to do. The indictment of the former president, was done by a group of 12 citizens randomly picked. But my job is to focus on making sure we get this child tax credit, making sure families get child care, making sure the railroads are safer than they've been, and with all the derailments, not just East Palestine, but all the derailments in Ohio. The justice system will work it out. My job is to focus on workers in the middle class.
A parental approval to sign up for social media. What Ohio leaders are asking from the General Assembly.
Parents, sadly, are not always aware of what their children are seeing and what they are doing online. And children are online a lot.
Recently, the U.S. Surgeon General called for lawmakers to take action to protect young people from social media. There are some options parents can take advantage of right now to monitor their child's use of social media. 10 TV's Carly Dion back again with more on a number of different resources designed for parents to monitor what their child might be posting and with whom they're communicating.
Let's face it, a lot of moms and dads don't have any idea how any of this works.
Lieutenant Governor John Husted is talking about social media, which is why he is proposing the Social Media Parental Notification Act as part of the governor's executive budget.
None of us would think it's a good idea to allow a stranger to have a conversation in the privacy of your child's room and collect data on them. Yet that's exactly what's happening through these social media applications.
The act would put parental restrictions in place for any adolescent under the age of 16 wanting to use social media or online gaming platforms. Husted says they've allowed social media companies to weigh in on the act to ensure they can comply with what it would require. But until it's passed, there are other measures parents can take right now to get more involved.
There are tools that families can use, not only to monitor their own child's social media use to protect their children, but also to supervise and parent their children who may be using it in inappropriate ways as well.
Lori Chris is the director of the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. She says there are free tools available online for parents looking for advice on how to talk to their kids about social media use. There's also a number of smartphone apps that allow parents to pay for services like real-time monitoring of texts and social media. And there's also options like Aqua One, a smartphone for kids designed for parents to monitor their children's activity.
Every action that a child takes on social media, regardless of what platform, all of that is sent to a parent dashboard, all in real time.
CyberDive's CEO and co-founder Jeff Gottfirst says the phone can track more than 3,700 different social media sites. As a parent himself to 3 children, he says Aqua One was designed with parents in mind.
We wanted parents to have the power and the ability to see who is talking to their kids in the bedroom at night when the door is closed.
Gottfirst says the smartphone also locks 3 times a day to check in on the child's mental health. He attended the press conference to show his support for state legislation to give power back to the parents.
It is time for government to help take control of what is happening to kids, and it starts at the state level.
Lieutenant Governor Husted says he's urging the General Assembly to pass this act within the executive budget as soon as possible. And remember, families can also call 988 if they have any questions or concerns about their child's mental health or potential for self-harm. For many teens, the scariest part is trying to figure out how to fix their social media mistake. 10 TV found a tool that could help.
Well, you can't go back in time and unsend. We can help you move forward.
This is video from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It recently launched a service called Take It Down. It's a tool that could help remove sexually explicit images online. We have a link at 10tv.com/featured links. Millions of dollars are going to support children who navigate school with the guidance of an individualized education plan. The state's controlling board, with State Representative Mary Lightbody, approved a $2.7 million increase for the Department of Developmental Disabilities. The boost will expand access to tutors, aides, and in-home providers who can supplement the needs of students with IEPs. Additionally, the controlling board approved $5 million to support businesses impacted by the East Palestine train derailment. The funds will be distributed as zero-interest loans to help with expenses and recovery efforts. Businesses located within a 2-mile radius of East Palestine are eligible. The Go Lunch Summer Food Program kicked off this past week at the Linden Community Center.
After COVID, we're seeing our numbers go back up. People are out more. Children are out more, they're eating more, they're spending more time out in the community, so this provides an opportunity for every child to get a meal.
You can text the number on your screen for more information about this. The Linden Community Center, just one of the many locations where food will be distributed over the summer. Each spot has different dates and times when the food will be offered. Still ahead, colorful cash flow.
It gave me the capacity and space to focus on a priority of mine, and that's the LGBTQIA+ community. just a one.
How community support is helping the LGBTQ plus community reach its business dreams. We are celebrating Pride in Central Ohio all month long right here on 10 TV. And today we put the spotlight on a couple of local entrepreneurs. Starting a business is hard enough. Starting one on your own, even harder. And that's why community support is so important. 10 TV's Gabriela Garcia has this story.
COVID-19 got a lot of people to shift their priorities.
It was extremely difficult being in the position of what do you do during a pandemic and where do you pivot, but using that as a motivator and not a crutch. It gave me the capacity and space to focus on a priority of mine, and that's the LGBTQIA plus community.
Ty Collier worked for his family-owned company in wholesale apparel before deciding to start Queerencia, an LGBTQ apparel and accessories brand based in Columbus. And in these last 3 years,
we've sold a lot of these fans last year. It's been fantastic. We've grown extremely fast and we've had a lot of support from our community.
Support from Chase Bank's free Minority Entrepreneurs program started to help people like Collier start their business on the right foot.
Some of the things that we have gained from the program is getting certified as a minority-owned business. We just hired an events coordinator, which has opened the door to contracts and opportunities with corporations and the federal government.
Thanks to those Central Ohio connections, Queerencia is partnered with Stonewall Columbus for Pride, taking on all their merchandise for this year's event.
We've already started the preparation for that.
A big leg up that Letha Pugh.
Community support is what keeps us going. It's hard being a small business owner.
Knows all too well. Letha and her wife Wendy started Bake Me Happy 10 years ago after noticing a need for gluten-free treats in Central Ohio. And starting out, money was difficult.
It wasn't like people were knocking down the door to help us. We spent our own personal funds to get Bake Me Happy started.
Since 2013, Pugh says their community has rallied behind their business and their message of safety and inclusion for everyone. Even making sure the bakery wasn't left out to dry during the pandemic.
The Urban League has supported us in a couple different ways, primarily through the pandemic. I did receive some support from Franklin County.
Illuminator Award.
Now,
Ms. Letha Pugh.
A winner of multiple community awards, Letha Pugh gets to pay it forward, helping the Urban League make decisions on how to help new business owners get started.
Anything I get started for you?
So it's kind of been a nice 360. I mean, it's taken 10 years, but being on the other side of it and being able to help people live their dreams, you get a lot further working together as opposed to tearing each other apart.
In Columbus, Gabriela Garcia, 10 TV News.
And you can learn more about the support for the LGBTQ plus community at 10tv.com. And now to a story you are only going to see right here on 10 TV. More baby changing stations coming to Columbus locations. And this one might be a gift, well, just in time for Father's Day. 50 businesses, organizations, and the Parks Department received 130 changing tables through a grant program. They had pickup at Columbus Public Health. Last month, Columbus City Council approved $25,000 for the program after the group Dadvocates for Change pushed for equal access to diaper changing tables throughout the city.
We've especially heard from moms through this campaign saying how hard it's been to always be the ones changing diapers publicly. So, you know, we knew we were going to hear a lot of stories. We were overwhelmed by the amount of moms that we heard from that were thankful for this campaign.
Lofi says they hope to expand this initiative to other types of changing tables in the future, and they are already hearing from other communities across the country looking to replicate the program. So happy Father's Day. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Face the State. We wish you a great week.